Joe,
Dondre,
what's going on?
how you doing?
I'm well. I'm honored to be here with you today.
I am just as honored. I'm just as honored. I mean, wow,
Yeah,
wow,
yeah, I'm
wow.
ready for this. I feel like I need to introduce you formally. Um, so you are labeled as the man who took hip hop's baby photos, baby pictures, and you're the author of two books. The most recent one, 111 Places in the Bronx That You Must Not Miss, and Born in the Bronx, your first book, a visual record of the early days of hip hop. You're a Bronx legend. I've watched countless interviews on you, and I'm just excited to talk with you today.
Dondre, thank you for the introduction. I'm honored and humbled to be sitting down with you. You are the future. You are the. If people don't know, people need to look at Dondre's work. He is the founder and author of Bronx Narrative. It's a press online photojournalistic of the Bronx narrative that's happening in real time now here in the Bronx. And not only did he found Bronx Narrative, he's a kick-ass photographer. I mean, from portrait to documentary. And you've got, what, 10, 12 years under your belt shooting photography, and your clients read as who's who. I mean, I wish I had half those clients in my backyard too. So, a big shout out to you and what you've been doing. And it's so dope to see young people, and I hope you don't take offense to that,
No,
me calling you young, because I'm a young 58, you're a young 28.
28, yeah.
So it's so dope to see the passion and love that I had growing up in the Bronx with photography, that I still have today in photography, to see that in a young brother like you, just navigating the roads and just making a name for himself.
Wow, I just want to receive that first off. Thank you. That's warm. I appreciate that. Icebreaker. Let's see. Biggest pet peeve as a photographer. You want to take this one, Joe?
Yeah. My biggest pet peeve as a photographer. So it took me a minute to go from analog, or as we know it as film photography, to digital photography. And I made the transition. It was difficult, this, that, and the other. But my biggest pet peeve today is that, and not to take away, but everybody's a photographer with one of these. And like, I'll be at events with my Nikon and my 28 to 300 zoom lens, and somebody will be there with an iPad. And like staying there, and as a photographer, I know you shoot and you move. You let the other photographers get their shot. You shoot and you move. So my biggest pet peeve is that, to those photographers or so-called photographers, get out the way. Move. Move.
That's important. Get your shot and move out the frame.
That's it. What's your biggest pet peeve?
I feel like I got two, but I'm just going to say one for now.
Go ahead.
My one would be when clients ask for the raw images of photos I take. And I think it's mostly because the relationship of the photo doesn't end after I hit the shutter. It still has to get processed, and I still have to figure out how do I want to tell the story. So no raw images. I feel like normally if you hire me as a photographer, I like to finish telling the story that I once started.
No, and that I agree with you 100%. When I get hired to shoot events, I do my thing. my processing, my triaging, my dumping of images and this, that, and the other, and present the images to the client. But like, you're not getting my raw images. That's like getting my negatives.
Right.
You're not.
Yeah.
You're
What
not.
do you do with it? You know?
And then, I bet you 9 times out of 10, they wouldn't know what to do with the raw images anyway, because we all use different platforms to process our raw images. I'm a Photoshop bridge kind of guy, and there's Lightroom, there's this, there's that. So like, don't ask for my raw images that you're probably going to be calling me up and asking me how to open them. You know what I mean?
Right. Let's just agreed upon beforehand. Then.
Yes.
I know what I'm going into.
But like, you're getting the finished product, and that's what we should be concerned about.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Another one up here.
Another icebreaker. I'll read this one. As a photographer, what is the best advice that you've ever been given? The best advice I've been given in my career and just in life in general is respect what you're shooting. Respect the person, respect the environment, respect. I know. I come from the old school tutelage where I want to tell a story. And if you're in that story, great. But I've always subscribed to the format when shooting is to respect what I'm shooting. I hate the term paparazzi. I'm not going to take your picture if you don't want your picture taken. My big thing is like, okay, you won't be in the next book. You know what I mean? But just respect. I think, that is the biggest advice that I've been giving. How about you, Dondre?
And I was going to ask you, like, do you feel that would you not shoot ethically, like homeless people, things like that? Does that fall under the lines of respect too?
It depends on what I'm trying to document. I've shot homeless people. I've shot substance abusers. I've shot a whole gamut of different subjects, especially here in the Bronx. But it's what I do with them after. You know what I mean? I have some images that will never make the light of day on social media because of the respect I have for the subject or whoever's in that picture. That's just me. I belong to a collective of photographers called Seis de Sul. And it's a group of photographers, David Gonzalez from the New York Times, Francisco Reyes, a whole gamut of Bronx photographers. And we shot the Bronx during a tumultuous time, during urban decay and everything like that. And what pisses me off is when we get these outside photographers that want to tell our story and show the drug addicts and the homeless people and this and the other. The Bronx is so much more than that. So I can find beauty in an abandoned building, because was a playground of mine growing up. But, as a photographer, I've always been taught, respect what you shoot. Pretty much nothing's off limit, especially when you're a documentary photographer, such as yourself and such as what I've done. But, again, if you don't want your picture taken, I won't take your picture.
Wow, that's good. I feel for me, it would be keep shooting. That was the best advice I ever got early on. And at first it sounded so simple and I thought, is this real advice? But as you grow as a photographer and you see your style change and the stories develop and even your community evolve, you really realize that just continue shooting. You're going to see new things. Your eye's going to grow and your perspective is certainly going to change too.
Oh, Dondre, listen, I've been shooting longer than you've been alive. And that's no disrespect whatsoever. My eye is still developing. And I got to be honest with you. I can compose a shot. I can pretty much know what I'm going to shoot. but every day your perspective is changing as a photographer, and you're going to notice different things as you shoot. So that advice for you to keep shooting is some pretty damn good advice. Pretty damn good advice. SANKOFA talk.
Ooh, drum roll, please.
Drum roll.
You
want to read that one out?
Yeah, of course. What's a misconception your generation has about mine, and why do you think that is?
My generation of your generation?
Yeah, we could do it both.
Wow. Okay. I don't know if my generation, like the Who song, My Generation, I don't know if, I mean, I don't want to pigeonhole your generation into a corner, because it's not true for everybody in your generation. Do you know what I'm trying to say? You know, I had been following Bronx Narrative for a while and saw what you've been doing. Didn't hear about you per se until all of this was coming together. But like, I can't pigeonhole you as a young photographer, because you're pretty much doing what my generation or older generation was trying to do or has done with film in today's world, in the social media platform. You know, when my generation started, we didn't have social media. We didn't have pretty much no platform whatsoever, but places like the Caribbean Cultural Center to show exhibitions or other institutions. So social media, your generation, has just changed the platform so much.
Right.
So much, where an old guy like me, I'm trying to catch up to a young cat like you, who's just doing phenomenal work.
Even still, though, like you feel like there is a catch up to be done at this level of your career that you're at. I mean, you have 2 books under your name. You know what I mean? Like,
Dondre, you got 40,000 plus followers on Instagram.
Okay.
I don't even come close to that. 15,000. You know what I mean? Yeah, I do have a couple of books under my belt. I've been around the world a couple of times. But it took me 30 years to get to this platform. You got to understand something. I was an unknown hip-hop photographer until 2001, when I got approached by Henry Chalfant to do a documentary called Mambo to Hip Hop, and wanted to license one of my images. Now, up until then, my images, my 10,000 negatives, sat in a shoebox, literally.
Okay.
And, I followed the careers of the Martha Coopers, Ernie Panicolis, all these great hip-hop photographers, and always wanted to be like them with their books.
Right.
And so I was discovered late, so to speak. And, when I licensed my first image to this documentary, Mambo to Hip Hop, is when I started getting the phone calls from MTV, VH1, and all these, Google, all this, like, can we license and can we do this? And, I'm calling up my mother, Ma, you still got my negatives? You know what I mean? And I started digitizing my work, and just, it was a roller coaster, so to speak.
Right.
And, but like your generation, and not to take nothing away, you have these social media platforms that your work speaks for yourself on all these different platforms that boom.
It's worldwide. Yeah.
It's
And then
worldwide.
a post. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like, like I said in the beginning, your clientele list is who's who in the corporate world. And, I can rattle off a few, but like, you're doing your thing.
So would you say the currency has changed?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yes. So getting back to, misconception, I don't want to pigeonhole, everybody in this generation compared to my generation. It was a different time and place, a different time and struggle, so to speak. But like, kudos to you. God bless, because you've taken your platform and you've done something good.
Right. Okay.
You know what I mean? Kudos, 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 kudos.
Wow. Yeah. I'm trying to think about that question for myself. I feel like, I don't know. I don't know if there's misconceptions that feel present right now that I can think about from your generation. I think something I have been seeing is photographers from your generation really trying to help photographers, younger photographers. And I think that's key, to share some of the gems and share some of the tips and tricks so that they have an easier way going up, because the artist photography realm is, especially in New York, it's competitive, so if you see someone with the light, if you could show them a little bit more of some of the tricks, not everything, but give them genuine advice.
Dondre, I'm giving you everything in the checkbook too, because let me tell you something. When I graduated from high school in 1980, under my high school picture it says I wanted to become a world famous photographer, work for UPI, AP, every Time magazine, this, that, and the other. But it was hard. It was hard back then. It was hard. So I had to transition into a different field, which was the medical field, that I made a career being a paramedic with the New York City Fire Department. But I never gave up my passion of photography and my love for the art form of photography. So, I can imagine what you're going through today, trying to make it in this world of photography, because there's more photographers today than there was back in my days. But like, you're there. You're like on that trajectory. You know what I mean? I just see it in your work. I just see it in your love and passion. So, yes, kudos to my generation. I'm a firm believer. I can't keep what I have unless I give it away. And it just so happens to be the other day, there was this young brother who I won't name, was walking around with this Nikon F, and the prism is falling off and this, that, and the other. But like, he's like, Joe, I gotta take your picture. And like, he knew. I was like, yo, come by my crib next week. I got 2 bodies, Nikon F2s. I'm gonna give you one. Joe, you're gonna give me one of your cameras? Yes, I'm gonna give you one of my cameras. It's sitting on my shelf. I got a lot of memories, but you can use it. You can have it. You'll put it to use. And that to me is like, like you said, it's about giving back.
Yeah, leading with abundance, not like a scarcity mindset. Like, oh, he's gonna take my job, he's gonna take my career. It's just like paying it back as you'd want someone to do for you when you're coming up.
Oh, definitely. Just the other day, I was called for a photo shoot, and I couldn't make it, and I called my boy up, and he took it, and that's how we do. That's how we do. We have a nice little circle, and just like in licensing images, there was only a handful of us taking pictures back in the 70s and 80s of this culture we call hip hop. And whenever I get a request for a photograph that I don't have, I'm like, call so and so. Here's their email. and vice versa. And that's what it's about. It's about supporting each other. It's about supporting each other.
Yeah, that's real.
All right, we got another one. What does capturing our culture mean to you? What it means to me is being honest.
Mm-hmm.
Being honest. I'm a firm believer you can't capture a culture unless you're from the culture. I might get some fallback on that, but I'm sorry. That's my feeling. You can't tell my story unless you've been in my shoes. That's what it comes down to. So, capturing the culture, whether it be hip hop, whether it be streets, whether it be, whatever you're into, unless you grew up or a part of it, I'm sorry, you it's not going to be as authentic.
Yeah, and before I answer that question, I'm curious for you in capturing the culture, because we know the story that we're capturing. Do you find that there is some harmony in how the photo is going to be seen and interpreted from the person viewing the photo?
Everybody's going to have a different interpretation of my photographs. Period. End of story. Whether I shot it 40 years ago or whether I shot it yesterday. It's all on how I interpret it. Okay. It's 9 times out of 10 when people look at my photographs, they're going to see what I'm trying to convey. That's respect, love, passion for the art of photography, for what I'm shooting, what I'm trying to document, whatever it may be. It could be a business luncheon. You know what I mean? A banker's luncheon that I get hired to shoot. I'm still going to shoot the way of documenting that 2-hour banker's event and telling a story in my photograph. There are going to be some pose shots, table shots, this, that, and the other. But I'm going to make sure you see what I see. So sometimes the audience doesn't see what you're trying to convey, and that's okay.
Right.
One of the hardest things that I ever had to do was help put this book together called Born in the Bronx, because an image might mean something to me and mean something else to you. And that's why I hate with a passion curating exhibitions of my own work. I'll let a curator do that.
Right. No, it's good.
Yeah.
You have someone from another perspective, kind of make sense of the bodies of work that you have a little bit more.
So Dondre, how do you approach capturing the culture, today's culture, the Bronx story, the Bronx narrative?
Yeah, I think first I like to start with defining what culture means to me. And, because I think my generation, we talk a lot about doing it for the culture and all that, but I'm always particular in what exactly is the culture that we're referring to. But for me, in the lens of the Bronx and Bronx narratives, I feel like capturing my community, which would be the culture and everything that it embodies, it's mostly about telling the stories that are lesser seen. And that I was reflecting on it earlier about like how, to me, like, you can shoot celebrities and things like that, which is fun, but I really enjoy documenting and telling stories of like community heroes, like people who are doing things within like the 4-block radius of where we live, because those people deserve recognition as well. Like they're worthy of a magazine cover. And to me, that's like capturing the culture and how I can tell my story or tell their story and put my style on it is is what I would define it as.
No, that's dope. That's really dope. You know, sometimes there are people that don't even leave the four corners of their neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And, you know, for you to capture that and tell that story and then share that story beyond the four corners,
Right.
the 4 blocks, you know what I mean?
So people know. Yeah.
Is pretty dope. Pretty dope. And, you know, I applaud you for that. I really do.
What is one aspect of our history community photographers that you wish more people knew about?
What is one aspect of our history community photographers that you wish more people knew about? We're 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 human beings.
Mm.
We're human beings. We have no ulterior motive.
Mm.
Okay, things have changed a lot for photographers, especially community photographers, back from when I first started, because I could walk down any streets in the Bronx and take your picture and not get questioned.
Mm.
Not get questioned. People would pose, people would ham it up, people wouldn't even notice me.
Mm.
Today, as a community photographer, what are you doing with that photograph? Is it going to be on the internet?
Mm.
Why are you taking pictures of my children playing in the pump?
Mm.
Are you a XYZ? No, I'm not.
Mm.
You know, so it's, you know, Jamel Shabazz,
Right.
one of the greatest photographers in the world. I look up to him. He literally walks around with his book to show people that he has no ulterior motive in taking your picture because it'll probably be published one day or be part of his archives. But I've gotten questioned before just in my own neighborhood. Why are you taking pictures of kids playing in the hydrant?
Mm.
You know,
Do you think that's like a detriment to like the internet now? Like, you know, we talked about the currency changing, and now it's like it almost is a little bad because back then you wouldn't think of that, maybe, right?
let me tell you, Dondre, let me tell you something. The internet has been a blessing and a curse.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, has been a blessing and a curse. It's been a blessing where I can connect with other photographers such as yourself and find work and show my work worldwide and so much. But then it's like I'm protective of my work also. And it's like people are just like jacking and stealing and this, that, and the other. And like, if it already hasn't happened to you, Dondre, get yourself a good lawyer.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. But you know, community photographers, you know, it's changed a lot. It's changed a lot, and you know, community being key word.
Mm.
So whenever I get questioned, I'm from the community. This is nothing more than a beautiful capturing of a beautiful moment that I happen to see or visualize through my camera. And you know, I wish people would know that.
Do you get questions then about like, hey, can I get the photo? Or
I'm like, sure.
okay.
You know, here's my card. Send me an email, and I'll send you the photograph.
Okay. So no
I'll even show them the, you know, look at the shot. Look at the shot I just took.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I have no problems. And one of the greatest assets that I have is that I don't deny anybody access to my images.
Mm.
especially my subjects who I've shot 40 years ago, who I still shoot. It's about sharing what we talked about earlier,
Mhm.
and that's why I've never had any problems, so to speak, with my images, because I've always granted access to whoever I'm shooting.
So do you ask before you take the photo? That's a popular question for us photographers. Like, what is your rule on that?
It depends. It depends.
Mhm.
If I'm gonna be violating your privacy, I'm gonna ask. But if it's just one of those spontaneous moments where two people are looking in their eyes or doing something, that I think is a beautiful moment, I'm going to take the picture because, I guess when you ask, it changes the subject matter, so to speak, because then somebody knows their picture is being taken. It's so, I guess there's a fine line, so to speak.
Right.
I have no problem in asking. I've done it millions of times.
Mm-hmm.
I just think there are some moments where, that shot will just look that much better if they didn't know that their picture was being taken.
Mm.
And again, I'm going to always fall back to I'm respecting my subject matter.
Right.
So you're not going to see somebody doing illegal stuff in my images, you know what I mean?
Right.
Or some crazy off the wall stuff, because eventually you want to show your pictures that you're taking, you want to share them.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not going to be taking photographs that I'm not going to be able to share, so to
Right.
speak.
Right. You want everyone to be at peace with what you're doing.
Yeah. Do you ask?
It's a great question.
Damn.
I mean, I feel like if there's a specific thing, like there's this one photo I took of this male with a Bronx Bomber varsity jacket. It was so dope.
Okay.
And there's no way I could get the composition the way I want it without having him involved in it. So I went across the street and asked him. And I get ambitious. Like I tell him what the photo's for, and I'll be like, yo, let me get a front photo. And he was like, no front. I was like, all right, cool. I got the back, and that's fine. But I think it's going back to what you said with like the internet and like people being more conscious of where it's going to be used. It's like, no one wants to be a meme. No one wants to end up on like, whatever website. And I think that it is my responsibility when I'm out there to make someone feel comfortable, to share those references, and just to make it like a fair game. If they say no, it's no. Like there's a million other stories and photos I'll search for and find.
I love the fact that you're able to visualize something and walk across the street and you've already taken that picture before taking the picture.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that is so dope. And the fact that you asked there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. I've done that time and time again. Because
it's like 10%. It's not a lot.
No, I hear you.
Okay.
I hear you. But the fact is that to hear you describe that tells me you've already taken that picture before you've even taken that picture,
mm-hmm.
which is so dope. Which is so dope. So dope.
Yeah, preparation.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I could be walking down I always have a camera with me. Or at least 99.9% of the time, I have a camera within my reach.
Hmm.
Whether it's in my, hanging off my shoulder or in the glove compartment of my car, but I always have a camera.
Got you. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna answer this question though too.
Go ahead.
So what is one aspect of your history, of our history as a community of photographers, that you wish more people knew about? One aspect. I think I would say the dialogue that occurs when you're documenting the community. Like, even that those conversations I'm having with the man with the Bronx bomber jacket, it's like it is a little bit of being a humanist and being able to build trust. It's like a song and a dance. Like being a photographer is, I always say, it's not just you're shooting the photo. That's like, you got to have like the right like textures to like deal. It's a people's job. Like you're working with all sorts of people. Most of the time you don't have a lot of time to like get to know them, but you're doing such a vulnerable act of like making an image of them, you know, creating this image in a collaboration and hoping that, I mean, I know I'm comfortable now that I know I can walk away from the set with something good, but knowing that when I shoot you, you're gonna like a few of the photos that come from this camera. So it's a lot of things, you know, to think about. And I do wish that that aspect of the dialogue and the being a good human is probably at the forefront, even before you touch the camera. Like you touch your intentions, you touch your heart, just so that you're pure and you're clear with why you do what you do, because these tools are powerful.
Very, very powerful. Very powerful. It's like you're capturing their soul, so to speak.
Right. Yeah.
You know, in these images. So.
Show and tell.
Show and tell.
I feel like I'm back at daycare with this. Ooh. All right. So this is my first camera I ever shot with.
Ever shot with,
yeah.
Ever.
So,
no film camera, no
film.
Wow.
This is, I mean, there probably were a couple like of the Kodak, you know, film things you did on trips, but this one is very significant in like my photography journey, because this camera was my mom's work camera. She's a social worker, and she'd go to people's houses and for her cases and use it. And I remember taking it one day for high school, and you know, you have all these like different, you know, costume days and things like that. And I was just documenting our senior year in high school. I never thought I'd be like a photographer. I love the practice, but I always found myself with like this camera and like graduations, I was taking photos. And I don't know where the camera is right now, but I just want to say thank you to
you gotta find it. You gotta find it.
Yeah, put it on eBay or something, you know, Dondre Green's first camera. But this camera is what like changed everything for me and the way I saw photography.
That is so dope. What's that? It's a Canon point and shoot, right?
Point and shoot, power.
4 megapixels, right?
But yeah, and back then, this is like 2012.
Yeah.
I was like, whoa, this is HD. This is different, you know. But I've come a long way, I would say.
That is so dope. That is so dope. I can't believe that your career started in the digital world.
Yeah.
And your first camera wasn't a film camera.
Nope.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Do you shoot film at all?
I've shot some 35, but most of my work is digital. I found that like with cost effectiveness and like, I just find it just to be better for the workflow that I do. But I do 35 for like events and stuff like that, or if I'm going away for more timeless things.
Right. That is so dope. That is, I mean, you know, like I mentioned earlier, you know, it took me a long time to transition from film to digital. Mm-hmm. I literally had to like teach myself photography all over again. Because, you know, I come from a world where, you know, my film cameras were manual. I had to set the shutter speed, the aperture, you know, what we call, you know, ISO today, we call it ASP, for film, the film sensitivity. And, so I had to relearn a lot of the stuff going from film to digital. Because if I wanted to stay competitive in this field, I had to know digital because
Right.
I'm sorry, we could shoot today and it could be published tonight.
Right. Everything is instant gratification.
It's instant gratification. And one of the first jobs in the digital world that I had was for a magazine out in Europe, Hip Hop Connection. They wanted me to document some of the hip hop events going on here in New York, but they needed, these digital files within 24 hours so they can publish them over in Europe. So, it was a trip. It was a trip.
Yeah, it's different.
So this is what I'm talking about.
Okay.
I'm the originator of the selfie.
Ooh.
That's what I tell the kids when I go to schools and things of that nature and speak to the kids. This is in the bathroom. We had 2 bathrooms in my apartment, and my mother allowed me to build a dark room in one of the bathrooms. I had such love and support from my parents, my mother, that she allowed me to build a dark room in our bathroom. And this is the beginning of a long journey that I have with photography. I was that chubby little kid with a unibrow, Angela Davis afro.
Yeah.
But I was the only kid in the neighborhood with a camera. So I could walk around with a camera. I could take pictures of my friends. I could take pictures of the streets. I could take pictures of my surroundings, and nobody would question me. As a matter of fact, my friends encouraged to have their pictures taken because I could run home that evening, lock myself up in my dark room, develop the roll of film, and the next day show them a contact sheet, of themselves. And then, for $2, I'll give you an 8x10 photo. You know what I mean?
Right.
Of you, you know what I mean? And it gave me a sense of pride, and I stood out amongst my friends because A, I wasn't athletic. B, I wasn't, a B-boy, a break dancer, DJ, MC, but I was that only kid in the neighborhood with a camera. And I was fortunate enough to take pictures during a time period that urban decay was going on around the Bronx at the time. The Bronx was burning. But there was so much beauty coming out of the Bronx during that time. The birth of hip hop, the birth of doo-wop, Latin jazz, so many genres of music, community activism. The Bronx narrative stories that you tell today had roots.
Right.
Real roots. Back in the 70s and 80s when I was growing up. And again, I was that chubby little kid with a camera, and photography saved my life, pretty much. Photography saved my life. I was on a path for self-destruction for a minute, and picked up the camera again, and it's been nonstop ever since then. And I've just been humbled and amazed on what this simple little tool
can do.
can do. Can do. Can do.
Personal questions.
Yeah.
Let's see what they got. Let's see what we got. Whew. To Dondre. What is your feeling of outside photographers telling our Bronx story? Yeah, I was thinking about this when you said it earlier about like the culture and having people from within it, from outside of our communities try to tell our stories. I mean, I wouldn't say that you can't take photos of the Bronx because you're not from the Bronx. I think you certainly can. And with Bronx Narratives, we're always sourcing images from other photographers, sometimes people who are just visiting the Bronx. And I'm always just open to seeing different perspectives of different communities all along. I think it's just about being intentional about what you're trying to portray. Like, don't say, hey, I'm out here in the boogie down, and you're not really out there with the people, like going to all the communities. Like, go to the North Bronx, don't just go to the South Bronx. Go all places so you can get a full understanding of what the borough entails. But personally, for me, to answer that question, I don't find it like offensive if someone comes in and takes photos. It's just like, don't publish a book and act like you're from the Bronx and all that. Like, just know the limitations of it, because you could just very well give the idea or let someone from the Bronx actually publish those stories.
Awesome. I asked you that question because I get asked the same question all the time. You know what I mean? Again, born and raised in Bronx, have Born in the Bronx tattooed on my arm, and I just, sometimes I take offense to people trying to tell our story.
Mm-hmm.
Because, again, and it's been done, and some of it has been done well, and some of it has been done ugly.
Right.
And that's what pisses me off.
Mm.
That's what pisses me off. There's so many cats out here that can tell the story of the Bronx because they grew up in the Bronx and know what the Bronx is, know what the West Bronx has to offer, the North Bronx, the East, the South Bronx, everything. I don't know. It upsets me sometimes, when our narrative is trying to be told by an outsider, so to speak.
Right.
And that's what it comes down to. Not to say that some outsiders haven't done their homework or pounded the pavements and know what it is they're talking about. But if there's still cats like you and I,
right,
reach out to us.
Right, first and foremost. Yeah.
First and foremost.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what it's all about. So,
got another question here.
Question: what was it like developing trust with the people you documented? It was a little weird in the beginning. I'm known as a hip hop photographer, but I wear many different hats. Before we went live, I told you my dad, Joe Conzo Jr., was Tito Puente's personal confidant. So I have a whole gamut of images of Latin musicians that were peaking during the 70s and 80s. And some of them are still around today performing, like Eddie Palmieri, community activism. So, getting back to, the hat of being known as the man who took hip hop's baby pictures, it was something new. It was something new because the Cold Crush brothers, who I'm known mainly for documenting their rise to glory and fame, they had the foresight to see what a photographer would bring to their notoriety in performing on stage. Before, hip hop was heard, before it was even called hip hop, before, it was being played on the radio and things of that nature. My high school buddy, Easy AD and Tony Tone, they invited me to take pictures because I was the high school photographer. And they invited me to take pictures of what they were putting together, which we now know as hip hop. And some members of the group were just like, what's going on? So I had to win their trust. I had to win their trust, just like other performers back then. I had to win their trust. And then eventually it got around that, that's Joe Conzo. Or back then I was known as Joey Kane, Kane, which is another podcast. You had to gain people's trust, especially during performance and stuff, until you gained a name for yourself. And, even today, some of the performers I shoot today, like Chuck D, a Public Enemy, and Swiss Beats, and all those cats, they know who I am. They know who I am because of what I've done in the last 40 years.
Right.
So it's like, oh shit, you're Joe Conzo. You took that picture that I have in my bedroom of, Cool Mo D or Grandmaster Caz, who I looked up to, who I wanted to emulate as an MC. And, people like Fat Joe, embrace me, because of my archives. So, sometimes you have to, get them to trust you. And sometimes it just comes naturally. It comes naturally.
Oh, no, that's good. Did you feel like it was pressure though for you? Like, did you have to be more punctual? Did you talk to me about actually develop, what did that entail as far as developing the trust?
Well, I mean, again, I wasn't getting paid back then. So it was a different time and vibe, and unlike today where you want to use my services, I'm expecting to get paid. So I had to earn people's trust back then also. And even today to a point too. I mean, Chuck D might love my archives, and, he has to know me as a person too. When I shoot him at these huge mega concerts, he has to know that that's Joe Conzo. He's shooting for me. Leave him alone. He won't interrupt the show. He won't interrupt this. As a matter of fact, you won't even notice him on stage. Just let him shoot. And, I'm a stickler for that, Dondre. I like to shoot the way I like to shoot. And maybe I'm sidestepping your question a little bit. But if I can't shoot the way I shoot, I won't shoot your event. So, yes, I have to gain their trust. They have to know that it's me. I'm not going to mess up their show. I'm not going to mess up their event. I'm not going to, use their pictures without their permission. You know what I mean?
Right. Okay.
So when I do these books, I reach out to people and I said, listen, I'm going to put you in my book. Is that okay?
Right.
And because I have their trust, they're like, Joe, do whatever you want to do.
Right. Okay.
So my question to you, what kind of narratives do you want to convey with your publication of Bronx Narratives?
Whew. Yeah, I feel like when I started Bronx Narratives, in the beginning, it was a lot of if you search the Bronx, and it still probably is the case now on Google News, it's everything but the stories that maybe me and you might really know if you're really in the community. So, all these Black-owned businesses, or young entrepreneurs who are popping up and doing incredible things in the Bronx. But those stories are probably like, I would say like 5% of what people from around New York City probably get the chance to experience and know. And so I found it hard to find those stories for myself. So I knew other people would find it hard to figure out those stories. And then also like galvanizing community was just super important because the Bronx is so spread out. I felt that like having a publication that also like centered community at its roots and made sure that we have accessible events. So all of our events are free of charge. They're mostly kid friendly. And I thought that was important. So like to answer this question, I would say positive stories is really what we look for. And if it's not under the light of positivity, like we do try to get it in an honest lens. So if something did happen that is major, that's important to cover, we do try to look at, all right, what angle can we specifically like zoom in on here that could lend some hope to the person reading it? And I think so far it's been an incredible ride. I've been learning a lot about the Bronx. I don't claim to know everything about the Bronx. I'm only 28.
It's funny last year when I was doing 111 places in the Bronx, you must not miss.
Yeah.
I thought I knew everything about the Bronx.
You don't.
I don't know squat about the Bronx.
Yeah. And that's okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
Big borough. It's huge. But like,
yeah, it's the only borough attached to the mainland. I'll throw that out there.
Yeah. So we're good, if any.
Yeah, we're good. We're not sinking.
But I've used like Bronx Narratives as like an ongoing research vehicle, so I can constantly learn about new things, and whether that's via Instagram or like Twitter, and like just to see what the pulse of the Bronx is. And it's always been exciting for me, you know. So I just want to spread positivity and I want to galvanize community as much as possible. And it's no secret that I'm trying to run it up for the Bronx. Like that's the main goal. Like, how can I put on Bronx artists? How can I work with more Bronx artists, more community events, more local businesses, etc.?
Well, thank you for answering that. You and I got to like link up more because, you know, I subscribe to everything you just said. You know what I mean? And it gives me hope to see a young brother like you have that aspiration and have that dream and make it a reality in positivity in representing the borough that you live in. And that to me is so dope. You know, I still feel the same way you do. It's about positivity. I sit on the board of directors at Bronx Documentary Center.
Wow.
Over on Cortlandt Avenue, 151st Street, which they're doing. We're celebrating 10 years. They're doing phenomenal work over there, D. Phenomenal work, and you would fit in masterfully. You know, you would be just right over there. You know, I'm also on the advisory board over at the Bronx Music Heritage Center, you know, that's doing phenomenal things, and the Universal Hip Hop Museum that's has a groundbreaking ceremony this Thursday. And like, you know, I need to like just grab you and just like, yo, this brother right here is doing phenomenal work and needs to be down with everything that's, you know, that's going on, because it's about upping the borough.
Right.
You know, when I was approached to do this book, 111 Places in the Bronx, I was like, okay, you know, yeah, let's do it. And I got shout out to Kevin Fitzpatrick, phenomenal writer, who did all the research, and you know, just like we made a list up and like, no, yes, and like, and we went and took us almost a year to shoot the book, but like it was about positivity, and I didn't want to tell the typical story about Yankee Stadium.
Right.
You know, I wanted the little mom and pop. You know, there's a hardware store on Jerome Avenue in Tremont that is no bigger than 6 feet by 20 feet, and only one person can be in there, but it's been there for 50 damn years. Frank's Sporting Good on Tremont and Park Avenue.
I know about that, yeah.
Has been there forever. And who's who? I mean, I got to shoot in the basement where there's a punching bag, and Muhammad Ali's been there, his signature, and just it's an iconic place. So I wanted to tell more, and I can, I just see what you're doing with the Bronx narrative is just such a positive thing, because when I travel overseas, the first question I get asked, how was it growing up in the Bronx? And I'm like, okay. I think I turned out pretty well. Right. We still have that stigma.
Right, yeah.
We still have that stigma. So, kudos to you.
Yeah.
In changing that stigma.
Yeah, and this question here is something, as I went more into your researching and your interviews, that I was curious about. So it's, as a former FDNY EMT first responder, how did you balance the responsibilities and bandwidth of your job with the passion of making images? Like, did one feed another? Like, could you, yeah.
Dondre, there's nothing wrong with having multiple passions. As I mentioned earlier, I wanted to become that world famous photographer and travel the world. It was a different time period when I graduated from high school. I couldn't find a job. I did work for some fine arts photographers after school, and when I graduated, but I had to pay rent, pay bills. So one of the first real jobs I had after high school was working at Lincoln Hospital in the Bronx. I worked in the emergency room as a clerk, and I got into the medical field and joined the Army, and I wanted to be a combat photographer, and they promised me the world, and didn't happen. So I became a combat medic, and that started my medical career. But I never gave up my passion for photography. Never, never, never. I just found a different career in putting a roof over my head and food on the table for my family. Photography has been amazing for me these last 15, 20 years. I've been to Bulgaria. This kid from the South Bronx has been to Bulgaria. How freaking cool is that? You know what I mean? And there's been years where I've made more money from my photography than my city job.
Wow.
But as a photographer, and maybe you could shed some light on this, there are very few photographers that get a pension plan, medical benefits, and all of that good stuff that you need when you reach the ripe old age that I've reached. So I had to find a balance, that bandwidth you speak about,
right?
In being a first responder with the New York City Fire Department Emergency Medical Service, and my passion for photography. And I was able to find that balance. I was able to do my 9-to-5 job, so to speak, and do my photography also. And I tell that to all the young photographers today. Have a plan A, plan B, plan C. There's no reason why you can't have all three passions going at the same time. You know what I mean? Going at the same time. Because you're going to need one day to kick back and relax and look back at your career and know that you have a check coming in and you
Right.
have medical benefits
Hmm.
and all those good things, because I'm not going to work myself to death.
Chasing every gig, you can't say no. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You want to enjoy the fruits of your labor.
Right. The goal is to rest, really,
Exactly.
at some point. Not just
Exactly.
continue creating work, 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 work. You want to
Exactly.
just get to a point where you can like take it a little easier than you were 10 years ago and the year
I
before.
mean, again, I've been retired 3 years now. 3 years from getting up Monday to Friday and going to work. Now I make my own schedule.
Mm.
But in those 3 years, I came down with 9/11 pancreatic and liver cancer.
Dang.
Thank God for my medical benefits.
Mm.
Some people don't have the luxury of, having medical benefits.
Right.
During this pandemic, a lot of my photographer friends and other friends were reinventing themselves.
Mm.
I, on one hand, was getting that monthly pension check
Mm.
and didn't have to worry about the next meal on the table.
Right.
So, again, to the young aspiring photographers, do it. Do it, do it, do it. But gotta think about
Sustain the
tomorrow.
practice. Yeah, sustain the practice, sustain the art. Yeah.
Yes.
Hmm.
Yes.
Thank you, Joe, for this.
D, this was dope. This is
Yeah.
dope, kicking it with another photographer back and forth instead of being answer these same old questions.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And us relating. That was thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And we gotta hook up.
Yeah. I
We
look
gotta
forward
hook
to it.
up.
Yeah, of
Yeah,
course.
yeah. Any questions out there in the internet world?
Yeah. It was there.
Okay. They're lost. Just
All
fine.
right. Peace out, y'all.
Peace.